All right, we are we're live on the interwebs here. We're live on TikTok and we're live on Facebook and YouTube. And so we're here to do a little bit of a contractor training with some Q&A. And this is based off of my podcast episode that just dropped this morning, episode number 96. What to do when your hair is on fire. All right, because a lot of us run our businesses like our hair is on fire, and that is not a very healthy way to run a business if you didn't know that. So let me just move this around over here so I can see a little better. There we go. Cool. So if you guys have questions for me, make sure you throw them in the chat, and then I'll answer them for you. But I want to kind of just get started with some of this training and what we talked about on the podcast. Excuse me. Bear with me as I still trying to get over this head cold I've had for a week or so. But if you've listened to let's start with this. If you've listened to the podcast, if you've listened to episode number 96, what to do when your hair's on fire, drop a 1 in the chat. That way I just know if somebody on here has actually heard that podcast episode yet. If you've heard it dropped this morning. So if you listen to it today, throw a 1 in the chat, and just to see if any of body on here has listened to it. No, Duncan. Duncan, this is not the marketing call, brother. This is the live free training call. The marketing call is on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Duncan he's commenting on Facebook, and it's kind of an ongoing joke, but in our coaching program, we have a marketing call on Tuesday that we do with my clients, and we talk about marketing strategies and all that stuff. So he's always, well, whoever that is, Facebook user, I don't know who you are, that says we need more marketing calls, then you got to join the group and get all those marketing calls. We've been talking a lot lately about ChatGPT and how to use that in your business. As that's the new hot trend right now. So a couple people said, one, Mike Baden, you would stick your head. He said, I haven't heard that podcast. I would probably stick my head under the tap if my hair was on fire. Yeah, you would think, Duncan. You would think that would make the most sense, but a lot of us don't do that for some reason. So what this is about was based on two Facebook. Sorry, Facebook's got me all jacked up. The problem of going on multiple platforms at one time live. This podcast is based on two conversations I had last week with contractors and what they were struggling with in their business. And the first one that I talked to, he said that they were struggling with like there's too many moving parts, and like he doesn't know what to prioritize. Like I call that shiny object syndrome. This happens to a lot of us. And so here's basically what happens to us in our business. We wake up today and we start our day, and it's going to be a great day. Everything's going great. And then about 9:30, we get a call from, one of our employees. We get a call from a vendor or subcontractor. So something happens, and it's like, hey, we got this problem. And so now you have to deal with that problem, right? Which that's pretty normal. But then what happens to us is we're like, man, this problem really set me back today. It really caused some major issues. I need to solve this problem so it doesn't happen again. And then what happens is we start to shiny object syndrome go and like, oh, I need to solve this problem. I'm going to go on Google and search and YouTube, and I'm going to try and find a solution to this problem that I have. And you may or may not get somewhere with it. You may go a little bit. You may make it 2 hours. You may spend the rest of your day, whatever it is. Like you spend an amount of time trying to solve this problem. And usually we don't solve the problem because most problems in our business that are major require more than a day's worth of effort to try and solve it, or the solution to solve it. But then what happens is tomorrow at 7:32 a.m., a new problem pops up in our business, and now our hair's on fire again. And so then it's like Groundhog Day all over again. If you guys ever watched the movie Groundhog Day with what's his name? Gosh dang, I just forgot. Caddyshack, Bill Murray. Every day he wakes up, it's the same day over and over and over again. If you've ever felt like it's the same day in your business over and over again, like Groundhog Day, it's probably because your hair's on fire and you are now you're reacting to what's happening every single day in your business. And so when you now a new fire has got to be put out, and so you start the process over of trying to solve that problem, and then you spend another amount of time to solve that problem. You never finished the problem yesterday. Now there's a new problem that's even more important or more urgent. And then tomorrow there's a new problem. And then the next day there's another problem. And it's just over and over and over again. And so we never really make traction in our business because we're going from each day from problem to problem to problem. And we're not really trying to fix it. We're not fixing the source of the problem. We're fixing we're like temporarily solving the problem for that day, but we're not fixing the problem or the part of your system or your business which is causing that problem. And so that's where we get to where we're putting our hair out. This happens in our business at different levels, but as we're going through business and we're 2 years in, and we've hired an employee or maybe 2 or 3 or whatever, and we're struggling because the guys they're making mistakes, they're not, they're doing simple things and have all these problems. It's because we haven't taken the time to actually put systems and processes in place to make sure that our business runs smoothly without us. Am I a mailman? You're getting mailman vibes. I'm not a mailman. I don't know how. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that means. Or Ramakol 9 or whatever your name is. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. If you can further explain, I'd appreciate it. Give me some information. So, put a 2 in the chat. Put a 2 in the chat if this sounds familiar to you. If what I just described about your hair being on fire, solving problems, put a 2 in the chat right now so I know if this actually resonates with you or if it sounds familiar to you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to grab a drink. No 2s, huh? That doesn't apply to anybody. Nate says, "What's Facebook?" You have to Google that, man. You have to Google it. What's up, Plumbing Tips? Thanks for jumping on again. So that doesn't apply to anybody. Okay. So you'll have to throw in the chat then where what struggles you're having in your business, and then maybe I can help you. The second conversation that I had with a contractor last week was this guy has several employees, like 15 employees. He's been in business for several years. He's got a fairly large operation going on. He's got a guy in a leadership position that has been with him for a long time, and he's a good dude, but he's just not very good at leading. And the guys that are working underneath him are making mistakes, and he's not correcting it, and there's just a problem with the leadership there. And so I asked him a couple questions. But basically, this is also what happens in a lot of businesses. We like to promote from within, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's usually works out pretty well. But the problem is that just because you're good at a craft or a skill does not by default mean that you're good at leading. And so what we do a lot of times is we have an employee who's really, really good. Let's say you have a remodeling company and you have a guy who's really good at carpentry. Like he can do pretty much anything carpentry related. He can frame houses, he can set cabinets, trim, like he's just phenomenal at carpentry. And we're like, man, he's so good. I want to promote him to a leadership position. And so he can train everyone else coming in and to be just as good as he is. Right. And so we do that. The problem is this guy is a terrible leader and he's a terrible teacher. he's good at what he does. He's not a good teacher. And sometimes your employee, they want the leadership position because of what expectations or what beliefs they have about that. And they think, oh, if I go to this leadership position, that'll be cool. I won't have to swing a hammer as much because I'm getting older now, or it's going to give me a bump in pay, or I just think it would be something that I would like to do. And so they may want to move in that position, but they're not really qualified to, or they may not want to move in that position, but you're looking for a leader, and so you're putting them in that position, right? The Peter principle is what Trudy says. And so what happens is they do really well as a carpenter. You put them into leadership and they fail miserably, right? And so then what happens is that person usually quits. And so not only did you lose your best carpenter, but now you have two positions that you have to fill, right? So, and yeah, Bray, I can't even say your name. They don't know the job behind that. Yeah, true, 100%. Yeah, the Peter principle. Trudy, you're right. There's probably some other names that go along with it, but that's basically what happens with a lot of times. And so you either have to do one of two things. If you have someone in your leadership position that's sucking right now, you either have to give them a lot more training, you have to pour into them, and you have to give them the training that they need, or you're going to have to replace them. Like that's really the only two solutions you have. That may mean moving them back down to where they're at. They may be perfectly fine being a carpenter, and you just move them back down and put a new leader in place. But usually what happens is they get to that position, they stress out. They get stressed out because they're not performing well. It's different. They're really good at carpentry. Now they're in leadership. They suck at leadership. They get stressed out. They quit. So someone says, first time listening from Africa, Ghana. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. My wife went to Africa a few years ago on a mission trip. I think they went to Ghana to some of the orphanages there. So, anyways, so this particular contractor I was talking to was having this was dealing with this. And another thing that happens whenever you promote from within, let's say you have 3 employees. Let's say you're the foreman, you have 3 employees, like maybe 1 carpenter, 2 apprentices or something like that. Everybody's on equal playing field, kind of like everybody's like mutually equal. And then you promote one of those people to a leadership position. The other 2 people that were left behind, they don't see that person as a new elevated position. And so on the respect level, it's the same, right? And they may or may not respect that new position. So if John, who was buddy with everyone, gets promoted, and then John's out the leader, the other 2 guys don't really see John as a leader. They see the title, but they may not respect him any different. And so if John's like, hey guys, we need to get this thing done or do this, they may or may not listen, right? So sometimes it's actually better to hire outside for leadership positions unless you have the person who has the skill in your team. Duncan, why are you on Facebook and TikTok at the same time? That's like really confusing. That's like Inception. It's like the movie Inception with what's his name? Yeah, that dude, Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, Duncan says, or I don't know if it's Duncan, maybe it's everywhere I go, I can't get away from you. That's good. That's good. That means that I'm out there. Leadership Strategies and Tactics by Jocko Willink has some great information regarding this. Yeah. Yeah, one of the good things, if you guys don't know about me, I was in the military, and there's lots of good leadership training and mentalities and a lot of that stuff that comes out of the military. So those are the 2 main things that I was talking about in regards to these contractors. The first one, when your hair's on fire, what you really need to do is you need to create a top 5 priorities board. So a priorities board it's usually a dry erase board, but it can be a piece of paper or whatever. But what you do is you create a board on a wall in your office or wherever you're at, and you put 3 columns, what do we need? Why do we need it? And where are we at in the process? The first column is where you're going to actually list the top 5 priorities. The second column, you're going to list like, why do you need it? And because it's going to allow people to understand the importance of why that we need to fix this or why we need to solve this problem or whatever it is. And so if you focus on the top 5 priorities, these are high level priorities that are going to move the needle in your business. See, a lot of guys get caught up in the low level priorities of like, hey, my guys aren't putting receipts in at the end of the day. And not that that's not important, it is important. But we could spend, 10 like us as the owner could spend 5, 6, 10 hours trying to solve this problem of putting receipts in, when really that could be like an assistant's job to figure that out. It can be your foreman's job to figure that out. For us, we need to start with the big rocks. We need to start with the big problems in our business, because if you solve one of those big problems, it moves the needle exponentially. If we solve the receipt problem, it moves it this much. If we solve a big problem like, hey, we need an estimating system because I'm estimating by hand right now. It's taking me 3 hours to do one estimate. Now we get an estimating system. I can do it in 15 minutes. Boom, we move the needle that much. And so we need top 5 priorities in our business that are going to move the needle the most. And you put these 5 priorities on this board, why you need those, and then where you're at in the process. And these are not necessarily things that you have to do individually. Your team can do it. But you put it on a board where everybody can see it in your office and in your business. These are what we need to work on. And usually these don't fall under standard, job description, everyday job description task. If you have an office manager or an assistant or a sales team, and their job is to answer the phone and send out estimates and invoices or whatever, or pay bills, that's their normal duty. The top 5 priority is above and beyond that. And so if your office manager gets done early one day, they should be working on one of those top 5 priorities. So there's really never downtime in your business, because if there is downtime, you're working on one of these priorities. And so once you replace one of these priorities on the board, once you solve it, it gets taken off and a new priority gets put there. You may have 30 things in your business that you need to, eventually solve for, but there's only 5 that you're going to work on at one time. You're not going to work on all 20 of them at once. And this is where kind of the shiny object syndrome problem comes in, because whatever's on fire that day, we got to solve that day. And that's where you get caught up. You get caught up in reacting to your day. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I didn't get anything done. I didn't get anything done I wanted to do today. What happened? Where'd the hours go? I don't have enough time in the day. And the truth is, you have the same time that everyone else has. You have the same time that, multimillionaires have and all these high performing people have. It's just they know how to leverage their time and how to focus on things that are important. So I want to open this up to some Q&A. If you guys have any questions, it doesn't necessarily have to be about what we just talked about, but if you can, that's great. The amazing Jay, I was in the Marine Corps. 4 years in the Marines. Clark said, had 2 big projects out on hold because of permits. Where can I find work real fast? Call your past customers. Clark Kent. Call your past customers and ask them if there's 2 strategies. One, if you offer a warranty on your work, call all of your customers that are coming up on like 11, 12 months, like at the end of their warranty. If you do a 1-year warranty, call those customers first and say, hey, your warranty's coming up in next month, and I just wanted to reach out and make sure there wasn't anything that needed to be fixed or taken care of, because I don't, once we get past that warranty period, it wouldn't be covered. And they may have something that needs to be fixed, which you would want to know because that's good service. But 2, a lot of times they'll say, oh, no, we're good, like on that. But I'm glad you called because we actually want to do this. And so I had one of my clients, I think he's listening, John, if he's still on here, a week or two ago, did this because he's in landscaping and he's seasonal. And he reached out to some past customers and he ended up selling $30,000 worth of work. So it does work, but you have to actually do that. And then once you've gotten through like the whatever the warranty period is, just start calling every one of your customers. Hey, I just wanted to check in with you, touch base, see how see how things are going and all that stuff. And then that usually will lead to, oh, I'm glad you called. Actually, I was just talking about you. We were just talking that we need to get this work done. So, Borlex Q. How do you deal with a helpers who are not really good at the skill set yet want good pay? Well, there's a couple things you got to define there for me. What's good pay? I mean, I don't know what good pay is. You're going to have to pay above what you were paid as a helper. Here's another thing that we get. I was talking to a contractor a couple weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, I can't find a good help. This is the hardest I've had in 15 years. I can't find anybody. I said, what do you pay them? He said, $18 an hour starting out, 22 after 6 months. I said, yeah, you're probably going to have to pay closer to 25 or 30. And he laughed at me. And that's just the reality of where we get stuck. Well, when I started 25 years ago, I only got paid $10 an hour and I didn't get raises for 6 months or a year. And we just hold on to that belief of like, that's how we do it. And so we have this like random value meter. It's like, man, I'll know if this guy's good. If this guy's good, I'll give him a raise. Well, that's fine, but how does that guy know if like when's he get a raise? Like what's the qualification for him to get a raise or to know how much to get paid? So the answer is and always will be when you're trying to find good help, the shorter the labor list gets, the more money you have to pay to get the basic person. So when I 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I was kind of hiring people for the first time, I was starting them out at like $15 an hour. And now if I was hiring someone, I'd probably start them out at $20 an hour with no experience. That's with no experience. That's someone who's got a really good personality, a really good work ethic, and they have the ability to learn quickly, but they don't have the experience. I got to pay them more. That's all there is to it. But the problem why guys struggle with that is because they don't have the right profit margins set up in their business. And so they're barely making money themselves. Maybe if you do the math, the amount of hours you work and the profit you make as an owner, you might only be making $60,000 a year. And there's no way you can justify in your brain that you could pay someone who's just starting out $45,000 a year because that's crazy. And you don't have the profit margins to pay that. That's because you're not charging enough. So if you charge the proper profit margins, you will have money in your business. Let me ask you this. If you had $20,000 sitting in the bank that you didn't need for anything, you were paying yourself $100,000, $150,000 a year. You had $25,000 sitting in the bank. How stressed out would you be if you hired a new kid, 20-year-old kid, and you paid him $20 an hour with no experience, and he worked for you for a week, and then you clearly saw that this kid doesn't have what it takes, and then you fired him? How stressed out would you be to lose that money per se after a week's worth of work? Probably wouldn't care that much. Versus if you have no money, right? You're only making $60,000, $50,000 a year. You're working 80 hours a week, and you have $2,000 in the bank because that's all the money you have right now because you're living paycheck to paycheck. How much more stressed would you be to hire that same kid at $20 an hour if he doesn't work out? You're going to be shitting bricks. You're going to be extremely stressed out, right? And that's it. Like, that's the difference. So charge more so that you have more options and you're not stressed out about it. I don't have any hats, man. I told you that. I don't have any hats. Find me a good supplier to make hats that aren't super expensive. That hats you wanted is like $45 plus shipping. They ended up costing like $50 to send you a hat, which I'm not opposed to that, but I don't have any hats right now. By the way, Duncan, if you are you still watching? You still on here, Duncan? I don't know if you're still watching me or not. Um, guys, throw your questions in the chat. We'll want to finish up here in the next 5 minutes or so. So if you got any questions for me, throw it in the chat so I can answer them for you. I want to be, yeah, I have a podcast, bro. Come on, man. Are you messing with me? Are you real? Are you trolling me right now? Are you messing with me? It's the name of my channel. Come on, man. I think you're messing with me. How to start marketing. I think I need to do a podcast on how to ask better questions when you're talking to someone to get help. Guys, you got to ask better questions. How to start marketing. You turn on your computer and you Google marketing. Does that answer your question? It's on YouTube. Yeah, gutter guy. It's on YouTube. I'm not Sergio. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just saying like that's so open ended. I don't even know where to start with that question. How to start marketing. A better question would be like, what's the cheapest way to start marketing that's going to get me results quickly? That would be a better way of answering that question, asking that question. Which business, gutter guy? Which business? When money doesn't motivate a crew member, is hope lost? No. Who is that? Crown Deck Coatings. No, it's not always lost. You should basically be interviewing your employees and finding out what's important to them. You need to, and this is one of the suggestions I gave to the guy that had the guy in the leadership position that was not doing well, because he is in the business side and he's got another employee that does, or another person that does the production side. So he's like just does sales and the business side. And I was like, dude, you need to be connecting with your employees. You need to be finding out, because he was saying that there was a motivation problem in his business. The guys just weren't motivated to work hard or really put a lot of effort into it. And I'm like, well, first of all, there's a disconnect. You need to find out what motivates them. You should know their family. They got kids. You know where they go to school at. What their family does is for hobbies. What's important to them. You know, what are their goals and dreams. Like, if from a leadership position, when I hire people, I'm like, what's your long-term goals? Like, what do you want to do? And if they say, well, you know, one thing I've always wanted to do is I want to, you know, one day I want to get my pilot's license. I'm like, that's cool. What can we do now to help you to start that process? Why has it got to be one day? Why can't you start today? Well, I don't have the money. Okay, well, what can we do then to generate money for you so that you can do that? So if you start trying to solve their problems and their family and their life, one, they're going to be more grateful because you're doing that, and two, it actually will motivate them, because you can paint a picture for them of a result and the outcome. And this is the exact same thing you do with your customers, by the way. What you do with your customers is the exact same thing you do with your employees. You figure out what the problem is they're trying to solve, and then you help them find a solution to solve that problem. And so if it's not money, then figure out what it is. Maybe it's time off. Maybe he wants to have more time off. Well, then maybe he only works 35 hours a week. He may not make as much money, but he only has to work 35 hours a week. So if you start finding out what's important to your employees, and it's not always going to be the same, then you can start coming up with solutions. That doesn't mean that you're just going to do whatever they want. The guy's like, well, I only want to work from, 10 o'clock till 3 o'clock every day. Well, that's probably not going to work. Probably can't come up with a solution for that. But if he's like, hey, it'd be nice to take off early on Friday. Okay, well, what if we do 9-hour days? What if we do 4 9s and then you take off early on Friday? That could be a solution, right? Let me go back here. Gutter guy, my remodeling company I had for 11 years. I still own it. I still have the license and all that stuff, but I shut it down last year. I shut my remodeling company down last year. I've been doing coaching for 2 years. I have been trying to implement the things you're telling us, and as an hourly rate, I come up with 210. I'm not sure what you mean by that. 210. An hourly rate is 210. Like per person, $210 per person. Is that what you're saying, Doug Straight? Gutter guy, I'll have you on my podcast. What would we talk about? What are you doing, Doug Straight, to get 210? You said you've been implementing the things that I'm telling you. What are you doing that I'm telling you? Yeah, Gutter. I know there's a delay on the comments and stuff, but yeah, Gutter guy, I'm a business coach. Yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. That's why I shut down my remodeling business, because I wanted to transition to doing coaching full time. I have a lot more passion and coaching than I do in remodeling bathrooms and kitchens. Just doesn't do anything for me. I priced the job at $575,000. I'll be subcontracting 90% of it. How much should be profit? You price it, meaning that's your cost, that's your COGS. Your total COGS is $575,000, meaning that if you charge 575, you wouldn't make a penny on it. You would break even essentially. Is that what you're saying? JM Unlimited, working on Get Off the Tools. Did you listen to my podcast on Getting Off the Tools, and or are you in my network? I did a training. I actually did a very specific training on how to get off the tools. If you don't have that, I can send it to you. You can watch the replay. It's a webinar training, a 1-hour training on how to get off the tools. Includes a worksheet to help you start that process. So if you want access to that, let me know. You can send me a message. You can join my Facebook group and get access in there. But yeah, I can send that to you if you're. Clark says yes. So Clark, here's the short answer. If your COGS is 575, then you would sell that for a million. What? 25. You would double it. That's the proper markup, 100%. Now, you're probably like saying there's no way I could sell it for that much. It just depends on what the job is and what all the different costs are associated with it. But that's what would be a healthy markup, 50% gross profit. So Doug Straight, your overhead is not factored into your hourly rate unless you're a one-man operation and you do work by the hour. So if you're like a handyman and all you do is hourly work, then you would factor your overhead into your hourly rate. If you're not if you don't do hourly work, if you have 3 employees and you bid jobs, you don't factor your overhead into your hourly rate. Your overhead comes out of your gross profits. The only exception is if you were doing a day rate methodology, which is just a different type of methodology. And that's basically where you factor in the cost per day, and then you could factor in overhead in that together. But that's not typically what I teach. You take your fully burdened labor, which includes all non-overhead expenses for your employees, and that's your labor rate, and then your material rate. You add that together, and then take that times 2, and that will give you your cost to do the job. Now, again, if you're doing hourly rate, depending on it just depends on what your business model is. If you're doing service work, or if you're doing piecemeal work or whatever, is how that's factored. I don't need any pressure washing companies. No, thank you. But you are pretty close. Um, JM Unlimited, if you registered for the webinar, then you should have got an email with a link. You said you missed it. I'm assuming that you were talking about the webinar I did. If you registered for it, you should have gotten an email with a link. Gutter guy, if you're still on here, shoot me a message in TikTok, and then we can get together on the podcast. Any other questions, guys, before we head out? I'm going to hop off here in just a minute. If you don't have any other questions, then we will shut her down. I want to be helpful for you, but I don't want to waste my time or your time. YouTube. I've never actually looked at my live on YouTube to see what it looks like. So interesting. All right, guys. Final. Got any questions for me? If you don't, then we're gonna go ahead and shut her down and call it a day. All right, I think that's it then. I appreciate you guys tuning in. A couple things. I always go live Mondays at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. A cheap website is better than no website. Yep, 100%. It's better to have a cheap website than no website all day, every day. As soon as you can update that and make it better, just keep making it better and better and better. Just do your best to do what you can to make it better. Just don't do a cheap website and then leave that, even though you have the money to make it better, and then just leave it and be like, oh, it's working fine. Well, it could work 10 times better if you had a better website. So we'll end it with that. I appreciate y'all. Every Monday, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, I go live. My podcast drops every Monday morning. Episode number 96 dropped this morning. What to do when your hair is on fire. That's 96 episodes. I have 96 episodes of business-related advice. There is a ton of content in my podcast. If you haven't listened to it, you should. Any of your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, doesn't matter. We're on all of the popular ones. Just search for the Hammer and Grind Podcast. Conveniently, it's the name of my channel. And if you want to join my Facebook group where I do a lot of content, a lot of more training and free stuff, you can just go to on TikTok, just go to my profile and click the link. And on YouTube, you can also search for, on Facebook, go to search for Contractor Profit Blueprint. It's the name of my Facebook group, Contractor Profit Blueprint. And if you're looking for coaching in your business, I have 2 different programs available. I have the Profit Club. That's my full total package. We work on everything in your business. Or I have the Sales Accelerator, and that is just strictly sales only. The Sales Accelerator is a much more affordable option. The Profit Club, it's my premium coaching. It's not cheap, nor should it be cheap, but it gets the results. So if you're interested in either one of those, just let me know. You can go to, again, Facebook, send me a message, text, whatever, and I can send you some information on that. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week. And one thing you should remember is that profit is not a dirty word. It's not. Profit's not a dirty word. Thanks, guys.